Today I'm going to be talking about the simple system for sustainable fat loss. So sustainable fat loss is, losing fat for a long period of time. And you'd only do this if were significantly overweight. So if you have maybe 10 plus kilos to lose, then you're going to be wanting to do this for a while. Obviously, if you have less fat to lose, you still want to do it this way, but it's a much shorter time frame. So I guess you're going to get more bang for your buck if you have more fat to lose than people who have less fat to lose out of this system I'm going to show to you. So this is the most viable system for long-term results that probably you can find. So using weight training paired with good nutrition and a cardio regime of some form is what's going to be needed to really make this work. And so today I'm going to discuss all of that and, show you how to make it easy, simple, and sustainable, and not make it interfere directly with your life very much to the point where, you're really struggling with something like fat loss, because fat loss is, it's pretty crap. You don't want to do it for too long, but you don't want it to take away from a lot of your life, because, you don't want to give up a lot to get a better, you don't want to give up so much that you're just suffering in a sense to get to your health and fitness goals. All right, so we're going to get started. All right, so first we got nutrition 101. I'm going to touch over the basics and the fundamentals of nutrition and training and cardio, and just really briefly, so you have an understanding of what you need to know and just how to apply that. So today we're going to go through the fundamentals and how to set up all these things for you, and that you can set them up yourself and make this really easy for yourself. So first, nutrition 101. So you can see the pyramid of nutrition priorities. So now nutrition is made up of calories. Okay, anything you eat, anything you put in your body has a caloric value, has energy. So people talk about counting calories, and that's counting all the food that goes into your body. Everything is energy. So what you need to understand with calories is there's a simple equation. You can see this with the balanced weight. So if you eat the same amount of calories you burn, your weight's going to stay the same. So the calories burned would be, we'll go into this in a little bit further detail, but it'll be calories that you have something called a basal metabolic rate, which is the calories you burn for just living. And then on top of that, your activity, your weightlifting, your cardio, your walking, your daily, anything you move around, you're burning calories. So all that entire number is your calorie output, and that's your calories burned. And then the input is your calories eaten. So anything you eat, anything you drink, has a caloric value except water. But anything you eat or drink has a caloric value, and that if those two are balanced, your calories in equals your calories out, you're going to have a balanced weight. So we're not looking for that. We don't want balanced weight. We're looking for weight loss. So if we go to the bottom of that, it says, we need more calories burned than calories eaten. So what this means is we can either do one of two things. We can eat less or exercise more. So we're going to do both of these things, especially if you're not already a training program of sorts, or you're very new to training, or you haven't even considered weight training but you want to lose fat. The best way to do it is through weight training. And the reason for this is, once you do get to your goal weight, if you have more muscle on your frame, you're going to be able to eat more in the long run. So it's going to be you're going to be less likely to actually get fat again, all right, or put more fat on. So you have more, you can eat more and stay leaner, theoretically. So, and muscle has a whole lot of benefits for your health that pretty much unmatched by anything. So weight training is the fountain of youth. So if you haven't thought about weight training yet, definitely get onto that. But we're going to talk about how to do this all through weight training, because I consider this the best way to, get healthy, get fit, and get the body you want. Okay, so all right, so we're going to go down into the pyramid of nutrition priorities. So we've got energy, calories. Calories is the main thing. Everything we eat has a caloric value. Now we go up that pyramid and we go into the macros. So macros is, there's 4 different types of macros, and these 4 macronutrients make up calories. So we got there on the side, carbohydrates, protein, fat, and there's alcohol, but we're not going to touch on alcohol today. We're just going to focus on the carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Hopefully you're not having alcohol every day, because that's probably not what you want if you're trying to do something like this. So carbs plus protein plus fat equals calories, equals the energy. So each gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories, each gram of protein has 4 calories, and each gram of fat has 9 calories. So adding all those numbers together, we're going to get a caloric value. And then if we go up the pyramid again, we go into micronutrition. So micronutrients. So, you know, your vitamins, your minerals, you get these from your vegetables, from certain supplements, stuff like that. So as you go up this pyramid, these things become less and less important. So your number 1 priority is getting those calories right. Then number 2 is your macronutrients. Then number 3 is your micronutrients, and so on and so forth. So we're really not going to touch on meal timing, frequency, and supplements, because they're very, as you can see, they're very high up on the pyramid. So if I want to touch over the fundamentals, we're going to go mainly over calories, macros, and we're going to touch over briefly on micronutrients. So when you eat any piece of food, it's going to have a carbohydrate value, it's going to have a protein value, it's going to have a fat value. Now, some of those values might be 0 for some foods, but each food has one of these 3 things, or all these 3 things, like most foods, and that's going to give you a certain amount of calories for that food. So when you eat a banana that has 25 grams of carbs, 25 times 4, 100 calories, 100 calorie banana. All right, 100 calories in a banana when you eat it. Okay, now that's the basics behind nutrition. Okay, so we've got the fat loss pyramid here. Now that you know a little bit about nutrition, what you have to understand, and what we talked about earlier, is having a greater calorie output than your input. So that would be at the bottom of this fat loss pyramid, would be establishing a caloric deficit. So a caloric deficit, so we want to be, having more output than input. So if we've got, for example, most females output, if they're training hard, would be around 2,000 calories. If their input is more than 2,000 calories, they're going to be putting on weight. If their input is less than 2,000 calories, they're going to be losing weight. So that's what we're trying to do here, is establish the caloric deficit. So you can see that pyramid, that's pretty just basically what you need to do. So we're going to do this step by step. So first we're going to create a calorie deficit. Then we're going to calculate I'm going to show you how to calculate your macros, how to manipulate your training, and the last thing I'm going to touch on supplements right at the end. So, all right. So first, we're going to talk about training. Now, this is the key to doing this right. And many people, you know, you always hear diet is 70%, training is 30%. And that is true. Without nutrition, you're not going to have anything. But without training, your nutrition isn't going to really have anything either. So I think they're both 100%, if you can say that. They both work hand in hand with each other. You can't have one without the other, especially if you want sustainable results, a good physique, and great health in the long term. So we're going to start. This is weight training right now. So you want to consider a few things when you're structuring out your program for yourself. How many days you want to allocate? So for myself, I allocate 6 days a week to training, or 5, depending on what I'm doing in the rest of my life, how everything else is going. So you want to consider if you're starting this out, you want to consider 2 things. So how fun you find training, and also what you can actually adhere to. If you can train 6 days a week, that doesn't mean you want to train 6 days a week. Maybe you only want to train 3 days a week. You want to find the balance where you do really enjoy it. Most beginners, you would usually want to start around 3 to 4 days. As you get maybe, so you start training for a few months, maybe up into 5 days. And then, when you really do love training, like most people who train 6 days, they don't even want to take that 7th day off, but it's better to take that 7th day off. That's why I recommend staying between 3 and 6 days of training. So I've always started on 6 days, but I always recommend beginners, especially who have no idea where to start, just do the most basic step, is allocate 3 days of training. So as you can see, I've got it split up into days on this. there's different sorts of splits and what sort of split you would choose if you want to train 3, 4, 5, 6 days. So I'm going to touch over these. So we've got, so your body is consistent of, as you know, obviously different muscles. So when it says full body, it means you're going to be training every muscle on your body. When it says upper body, the upper part of your body, legs, lower part of your body. Push, so your push is your pushing muscles. So your chest, your shoulders, and your triceps. Your pulling muscles are your back and your biceps, and legs are obviously your quads and your hamstrings, your legs, your calves, you know, all that stuff. So if you know that, then you can break up your body, and these sorts of splits are very good because you're frequently training your body. So as you can see with the 3-day split, you're training your full body 3 times. With the 4-day split, twice, 5-day twice, 6-day twice. But as you can see, as you go higher up in the days, you're dedicating more time to certain body parts, which means you're going to be dedicating more time in the gym, which means you're going to have more energy you're expending more energy through the week. So we look at this on a weekly scale. Someone who trains 6 days a week is going to burn a lot more calories than someone who trains 3 days a week, for example. So, but then again, we still need to consider the adherence and enjoyment of training, because the number one thing when it comes to any of this is adherence. If you can't adhere to what you're doing, there's no point in doing any of this. But we want to, and fat loss is very hard. So making this as easy as possible and making this sustainable where you're not making huge changes and making minor changes in order to achieve the results, that's what you're after. So, all right, so how many days do you want to allocate? Once you know that, now you want to structure your program so that we're focusing on compound movements. If you don't know what compound movements are, they're movements that work more than one muscle at a time. So you probably heard of the squat, the bench, the deadlift. They're the 3 biggest compound movements. They use the most muscles in the body when you're doing them, especially the deadlift. So focusing on your compound movements, that means having those compound movements at the start of your workout, because they're going to fatigue the most muscles. They're going to be the most high energy movements as well. So putting a lot of focus on your compound movements and focusing on building strength in the short term and muscle gain in the long term. So ultimately the goal is to build more muscle, because the more muscle we have, the higher our metabolism is. So you're not going to get a higher metabolism by drinking green tea, going on a lemon detox. You're going to get high metabolism by building more muscle. So the more muscle you have on your frame, the more you can eat without getting fat. So some people always joke about, you know, you train to eat pretty much. Well, I train to eat a lot of the time because I eat a lot, and so I have to train a lot. So I don't get very fat. All right, so in the long term, we're always looking for muscle gain, but in the short term, now muscle gain is very slow. So if we looked at how much muscle we were gaining on a week-to-week basis, we'd get very disheartened, very demotivated, very unmotivated very quickly. So you need to focus on strength in the short term. So week to week, you should be looking to progress in your numbers that you're hitting. So for example, on Monday, if you structure, let's go for the 3-day split, for example, we've got a full body day. On Monday, you'd be doing, for example, a deadlift. We do a deadlift, 5 sets of 5 out of 100 kilos. The next week, when we do that deadlift for 5 sets of 5, we want to increase that weight to 102.5, and so on and so forth. And if you do this with every exercise over the short term, you're going to keep increasing. Over the long term, you're going to have ginormous strides in your progress in strength, but also progress in muscle gain, which is what we want to do as well, especially when we're trying to lose fat, because the more muscle we have, the easier fat's going to be to lose. So, you know, big bodybuilders have a much easier time getting that's why they can get very, very lean compared to a normal person. Normal people have to completely starve themselves essentially to get extremely lean. So bodybuilders, because they have so much muscle, they can eat a lot more food, and food that you'd put on a lot of weight with, they can eat and lose weight with, because they have a lot more muscle, they have a higher metabolism. So muscle gain is the pinnacle of all of this. All right, so having those compound movements at the start and focusing on them and focusing on progressing on them. So if you have like squat, bench, deadlift, shoulder press, lat pull down, bend over row, these sorts of exercises, you should be focusing on them mainly and making sure you're progressing week to week in them. If they're not going up, you're doing something wrong. Now, this is especially true when you start out training. When you start out training, you'll progress much faster than someone who's been training for maybe a year or two, but you should keep a logbook of this, because if you keep a logbook, you're very easily able to track this and understand what you're doing. So you can write down all the lifts you do, how you're feeling on that day, all that sort of stuff, but you know that you hit these numbers, and then the next workout, you already know what you have to do. You know what numbers you have to hit, and that's what you're going to put on and try and hit it. So you got to make sure that you're progressing week to week. You're progressing with the strength. That's all you need to do in the gym, progress with the strength. Now, outside of that, planning out your training. So once you've selected the days and you've got the sorts of movements and stuff, you need to balance how many exercises. You need to balance recovery, getting adequate recovery with volume and intensity. So, for example, on your full body day, you wouldn't do 40 exercises. Just say we're doing the 3-day split. If you're on your Monday, you wouldn't do 40 exercises. You would do maybe 5 or 6. If you did too many exercises, you wouldn't have recovered by Wednesday to repeat your full body workout again. So you need to balance this. And when you start training differently, even no matter what you're doing now, if you start training differently, you're going to be more sore and you're going to take longer to recover, but your body's going to adapt, in usually about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So make sure that you know that your body is physiologically capable of what you're doing. If you're doing full body 5 days in a row, your body's not physiologically capable of adapting to that, to what would be beneficial and optimal. So we're trying to balance all these things, which is the really hard part of many people struggle with this. So it's about balancing your frequency, how frequently you train your body, and I've dumbed this down for you so you know exactly what to pick when you're training. You want to balance your volume and your intensity. So if you were doing a deadlift, you wouldn't do 10 sets of a deadlift because that's going to destroy you. That's very hard. So you would do maybe 3 or 5 sets of a deadlift, and making sure you only deadlift once a week. That's a great start. Then benching, you can do it two times a week, once a week, depending on if you're male or female. Usually males like to bench press more, females like to squat more and train legs more, and males like to bench more and train upper body more. So you have to balance this all out. So the key is this can take a bit of trial and error. Getting a basic plan from someone might make it much easier for you, but following these simple rules and then just going on how you feel. Usually most people will spend about 45 minutes to an hour in the gym. You're spending a little bit less, just make sure it's a bit more intense, and that's all right. But if you're spending more than an hour, you're probably not balancing. So volume is how many sets and reps and weight you do. So you're probably not balancing the sets right if you're spending an hour and a half, unless you're chatting, right? If you're probably spending an hour and a half, you're probably spending too much time in the gym, and you're not going to be able to recover for that next session, especially with a high frequency day. Especially even if you're doing something like the 6 days, we're doing the push on Monday and the push on Thursday. If you, go all out on your push day on Monday, and not only all out, but you do so much that your body hasn't recovered by Thursday for those same pushing muscles, you're gonna really lack the strength and energy to do that Thursday push workout. So this will take a bit of trial and error, but once you get it right, you can stick to it, and you've got to keep within the same exercises. It's really, really important to be doing the same exercises. Now, you hear people say stuff about muscle confusion, and you should switch up your workouts and stuff like that, but that is completely incorrect. You need to keep the exact same exercise. I truly believe that you should have a very small pool of exercises, like stuff that's still fun for you, but it should be quite small, that you're not doing all these different exercises, especially if you're looking to progress. Because if you do an exercise that's similar to the other exercise, but it's not the same, how do you know if you're going to progress? You don't. You're changing the exercise, you're changing the variable. So keeping the exercises the same and making those only the variables, the weight, is going to help you tremendously in the long run. For example, if you do a bench press and then you went to an incline bench press, similar movements, working this chest, one's working the upper chest, one's working the whole chest. But if you're bench pressing 100 on the kilos on the flat bench, and then you want to see your progress in a year maybe, and on the incline bench you're benching 100 kilos, you'd be like, I don't know, did I make progress? Did you make progress? You did, but you don't know you did, because now you've got two different variables, two different exercises that you're taking from. So make sure you keep your exercise pool small, and make sure to focus on progression within each workout and week to week on your strength and on your strength numbers. All right, so that's the basics behind the structuring of your training. All right, so that's the important part. This is also equally important, as I said before. Nutrition is equally important as training. So we've got the nutrition. Now, the nutrition is actually the hard part of setting up because there is a lot of variables involved in this. So I'm going to be trying to make it simple as possible with this. So we've got on the left, you can see that energy output is there on the left. So that's resting metabolic rate plus thermic effect of meals plus NEAT plus exercise. So NEAT is so exercise is obviously, you know, running, walking, the dedicated cardio sessions and your weight training. NEAT is when you're not consciously trying to expend calories. So when you ride, when you're riding, when you're standing up, when you're fidgeting, when you're you walk to the fridge to get something to eat, that's the sort of stuff that's still going to burn calories, but you really can't account for it. So that's NEAT. Thermic effect of food, you don't need to worry about too much, but I guess having the knowledge that when you eat food, there's a certain amount of energy that goes into burning that food to absorb it. But that's not going to be really taken into consideration when you're trying to calculate your energy output. So we've got resting metabolic rate. Now, resting metabolic rate is the amount of calories you burn when you're just living, when you're in a coma. This is how many calories you're going to burn from your organs and stuff like that functioning. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do that, if I can. So where is it? We've got, okay, share screen. Okay, so that should be showing the BMR calculator. Yeah, that's showing the BMR calculator. So with the BMR calculator, you can see, so this is how you track your BMR. So just type in BMR calculator on Google and you'll find how to track your BMR. So BMR is basal metabolic rate, the amount of energy in a coma. So you're going to burn this no matter what. Okay, so you need to figure this out. This is the base number. And so just putting in your height, your weight, and your age, and then if you're male or female. I'm going to do mine real quick so you have an idea. So I'm about 100 kilos, 5'7", I'm 22, I'm a male. Calculate BMR. All right, we've got a number of 2,100. Okay, now 2,100. Now females will have this much smaller. So if you're a female and you weighed maybe 150 pounds, whatever, so you can see 2,100 for me. A female who's much lighter than me would have a BMR of 1,500 calories. As you get older, this BMR also is lower as well. So the taller you are, the heavier you are, the younger you are, and if you're a male, that's going to make the difference in the BMR. So the BMR is your fundamental. Once you've got the BMR, now all you have to do is I'm going to go back to the slideshow presentation. So you've got to multiply that by a number. So this is called the activity level multiplier. So on the right there, we've got, you can see the activity. So 1.0 is your baseline. Then you have to take this across the week. So it's on a scale, I would go from a scale from timing it by 1 to timing it by 2. Now you want to be in between there somewhere. How do we know where we are? So this depends on how much you're training and how much you're training, how much cardio you're doing, and how active your job is and what you do most of. So for example, if you're very sedentary and you have an office job and you're training 3 times a week, you're going to times that BMR by maybe 1.4 or 1.3, right? I'd be pretty safe first to start with if you're trying to go with some fat. Oh, I'd be going something a little bit higher if you're fat loss. So your body weight. So first we need to figure that out. So on a scale from 1 to 2.0, so 1 would be not doing anything, completely inactive, not training, pretty much lying down on the couch for the whole day. That would be 1.0. If you train 3 times a day and have an office job, it'd be about 1.3 to 1.4. If you were training 5 to 6 times a day, 5 to 6 times a week, then you're going to be moving up past the 1.5 range. Now, if you're training 5 to 6 times a week and maybe you're a laborer, you're going to be at that 1.8, 1.9 multiplier. So the more activity you do, the higher the multiplier, the higher the energy output you have. So but this also requires a lot of trial and error due to metabolic adaptations that happen over time. So you need to make sure you're tracking this really well. So first, you've got to get to build any sort of plan, the first 2, 3, 4 weeks is very, very crucial to make sure it's working, to make sure you're doing everything right, and then you can then manipulate it from there. If you don't track it for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks closely, you can have no idea if you need to manipulate it. So you start off and get your resting metabolic rate, which could be anywhere from 1,500 to 2,200, around there, and then you times it by the multiplier. So we're going to do something pretty basic here. So just say your BMR is 2,000 and you train 4 times a week and you have a decently active job. Maybe you're a teacher and you're walking from block to block, like from the school, all around the school building and stuff like that, or you're a nurse or something and you're walking from bedside to bedside, walking across all the wards, then you'd be maybe a multiplier of 1.5. So now we've got 2,000 times 1.5. So that would be 3,000 calories, okay? That's how much energy that's how many calories we need to eat for the day to maintain our body weight. Now now we have to establish a caloric deficit. So we have to eat less than that to lose weight. So the one that most people use and the one that's pretty basic is going in a 500 calorie deficit a day. So 500 calorie deficit a day would be 3,500 calories deficit over the week, which is a pound, a half a kilo of body weight. So that's where people talk about the safe way of the safe amount of body weight to lose is about half a kilo. And that's what I am with my clients, a minimum of half a kilo a week. So going in a 500 calorie deficit, for males, you probably can go even a little bit lower than that. For females, I wouldn't go lower than that at the start, especially you want to get the most out of your calories and you want to get the most out of your starting calories before you manipulate anything. So for example, if we have a female who had 1,500 resting metabolic rate and then 1.4 activity multiplier, and she was on 2,100 calories, she would go to 1,600 calories to start with. Day one, she would be on 1,600 calories. That was a 500 calorie deficit. And then over the upcoming weeks, you'd see how much weight she's losing. If she's losing about half a kilo to a kilo, she's on track. If she's not, you need to change that up. You need to now make it maybe a little bit lower or add a bit more exercise in there. So you got to play with it to make sure you're consistently losing the weight, because if you have a goal of 10, 15, 20 kilos of body weight, you're not going to lose it if you're not losing the actual body weight, right? So you need to lose the weight on a week-to-week basis. I think it might be in the next couple of slides. I'll show you how tracking works and stuff like that. So once you know how many calories you have and how many calories you need to eat, now it's about doing it. You've got your training structured. You know how many days you want to do it. You have a brief idea of what exercises and stuff you're doing. You're focusing on the compound movements. Now you're focusing on the nutrition part of it. You know how many calories you need to eat. Step one, knowing how much calories you need to eat from day one to be in an adequate caloric deficit. So once you have that, now we're going into how to set this nutrition up. So just say we need to eat 2,000 calories to lose half a kilo a week. Half a kilo a week is 500 calorie deficit a day. So that would just say it's 2,000 calories. Now what we do, there's a couple of different things you can do. You definitely want to download this app no matter which way you go about it. You want to download an app called MyFitnessPal. Now what MyFitnessPal does, it's an energy tracker and allows you to put in any sorts of foods. And once you put these foods in, it's going to spit out caloric numbers for you, protein, carbs, and fats. You can scan these foods. It has a database of millions of foods as well, franchise restaurants, everything. So you can make sure you don't let the app set the goals for you, since you already know the goals. So this thing on the right that says welcome back, make sure you're not, it says current weight, weekly goal, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't matter what you put for that. Make sure you set your own goals by setting your own goals and setting 2,000 calories, for example. Now, with the 2,000 calories, we need a basic macronutrient split. So with the macronutrient split, we talked about protein, carbs, and fats. So firstly, for the protein, we want at least for males and females, about 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, I like to go a little bit lower than this because with athletes and stuff, the range is about 0.8 grams to 1.1 grams per pound of body weight. So for someone who's about 100 kilos, they're going to be having, that's 220 pounds, they're going to be having around 190 grams of protein to 220 grams of protein. So you need to make sure that's the number one thing after calories, is protein intake. you don't have enough protein intake, you're not facilitating muscle growth, muscle hypertrophy, and you're going to actually eat into your muscles when you're losing weight. Protein is essential for maintaining muscle mass while you're in a caloric deficit. When you're in a caloric deficit, your body needs to pull energy from somewhere. So if you're in a 500 calorie deficit a day, it's going to take that 500 calories ideally from fat and muscle, right? So that's dictated by how much protein you eat as well, and a few other variables. But how much protein you eat is going to be the main dictator of that. So whether it takes 0 calories from muscle or 500, or well, we can't take 500, but just say it takes 250 calories from muscle, you don't want to be losing muscle because that's going to slow down the metabolism. So to keep that metabolism at a decent level, you need to make sure you're eating enough protein. So if you are, for example, 100 kilos, you should be consuming about 190 grams of protein to 220 grams of protein. That's the first step. So knowing how many calories you need to consume. So let me go back to this slide. So how many calories you need to consume is the first step. Then, so you 2,000 calories and you need to consume 180 grams of protein. Now there's 2 other macronutrients you need to put in, is your carbohydrates and your fat. So your carbohydrates is your energy source and your immediate energy source. Fat is what you need to sustain. You can use it as an energy source, not as efficient as carbohydrates, but it can be used as an energy source. But fat is also it's responsible for hormonal levels. So your testosterone and your estrogen and stuff like that, all those hormones that actually are the main things that are going to affect you the most. So if your testosterone's too low, if your estrogen's out of whack, any of these things, you're going to have, you can throw all this nutrition and training crap out the window. There's no point in even doing anything if your hormones aren't at healthy levels. If they're not at healthy levels, none of this is going to work. It's literally, you can throw all this shit out the window. It doesn't work. You need to make sure that your hormones are checked and they're fine. So I would always keep your fat above 50 grams. So for a male, I would keep it about 50, going up to 70, depending on how many calories you have. And if women, I'd just keep it about 60 grams, 50 grams. Around that number is pretty good for anyone. So obviously the higher fat you have, the more, I guess, freedom you have. So with males having so many more calories adequate, that's why you can have a little bit higher fat. But don't really go under 50 grams of fat. I would even say don't go under 55, 60 grams of fat. Just keep it around that. So now that you have the protein at about 1 gram per 1 gram per pound of body weight, or 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. So half a kilo is 1 gram. Yeah. So half a kilo, 1 gram of protein. Once you've got that number, now go to the fat. You put about 60 grams of fat. The rest is carbohydrate. So the rest to equal the calories. So if we have 2,000 calories, 180 grams of fat, 180 grams of protein, 60 grams of fat, then calories, that number divided by 4, you're going to get the carbohydrate. And that's how you fit your macronutrient ratio. So it's pretty basic to start with. You want to keep a diet decent in carbohydrates, adequate amount of protein, adequate amount of fat. Now, there are many different diets out there. You've probably heard of keto, which is cutting out your carbs. We're not going to get into that because there's different types of diets, but I found this to be the most effective for building muscle and losing fat at the same time, which is essentially what we're trying to do. And to be sustainable with your journey, to make sure your performance is high in the gym while you're still eliciting fat loss. So once you've got these, you've got your calories, you've got your protein, you've got your fat, you've got your carbs, make sure to put these in MyFitnessPal in the goals section. And then once you have your goals done, now all you have to do is hit these goals every day. So you can either just do it on MyFitnessPal and have more freedom with what you're doing, or you can set a meal plan by just trial and erroring it all, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, trial and erroring a meal plan, and then just eating that every day and changing it up. I always use MyFitnessPal. I find it much easier to use. I get a bit more variety in my diet. If I don't want chicken, I can fit in beef, fish, whatever it is. I can fit in different protein sources and not eat the same thing every day. When I'm in a competition prep, I am a lot more strict and I just eat the same thing day in, day out. But I don't need to think as much if I'm doing that as well. But if you want a sustainable fat loss, it's best to use MyFitnessPal because, for example, if you do want a chocolate bar, it's not going to take away from your goals because you're still accounting for it. You're accounting for everything you're eating and you're staying within your goals and you're hitting your goals. you're going to achieve the results in the long run. Just making sure you're hitting your goals and you can sustain it and adhering to it is the main thing when we're trying to do this entire thing. All right. So now that you have your training, nutrition, your nutrition down, the third element, cardio. Cardio is often, for beginners, very overutilized, and it's pretty ridiculous when you go to the gyms and the treadmills are full. There's so many, cardio equipment in the gym, in these beginner gyms, and it's frustrating because people are actually wasting a lot of their time going on this cardio equipment. Now, what is cardio actually used for? It shouldn't be a fundamental source of training unless you are an endurance runner, unless you're doing a marathon, unless you're one of those things, and most people aren't. That most people want to get in shape or tone up or lose fat. Cardio isn't the way to do it. Cardio is another tool in the tool belt. Same as nutrition, same as, supplements. They're all another tool in the tool belt. So nutrition is your fundamental thing and cardio is added onto that thing. So like we talked about, cardio is another aspect of your energy output. So if you were to plateau with your basic training and nutrition, you'd add in cardio. You'd never start out with cardio. So when we create this fat loss plan for you, you are training a certain amount of days. Just say we're training 3 days a week. You're eating a certain amount of calories to establish a 500 calorie deficit. Let's say we're eating 1,500 calories a day. Then we're not adding cardio at the start. Cardio is not part of it, right? Once we plateau, then we add cardio in as needed. There's 2 forms of cardio we can do, which are probably the best for fat loss and still building muscle at the same time. Would be, you've got your steady state cardio, which is like walking on a treadmill, going for a walk or something like that. And then you've got high intensity interval training, which is going all out, like 90 to 100% heart rate for a short amount of time and then quite a long rest. And then doing that repeatedly. You get the same amount of calories burnt over the long run in both these aspects. However, the high intensity interval training is going to be much shorter than, the steady state cardio, which is walking on a treadmill, for example, for a very long time. So you can research more about high intensity interval training versus steady state cardio, low intensity steady state. But I would stay away from this from the start and only add this in when you need to. So when you do plateau, then I would either look into a couple different things. The first thing I would do is, if you're not training 5-6 times a week, I would try to get up to that point, because you're going to get the most bang for your buck at about, you don't even need to go to 6, probably trying to get at least 4 to 5 times a week. So that would be the first step when you plateau, is upping your training days. Now, making sure to remember about the enjoyment and the adherence. If you're training too much and you hate it, you're not going to keep doing it. So you want to make this sustainable. Just say you don't like training more than 3 days a week. All right, then option number 2 is you lower your calories. But you don't do this yet. Just say you're starting to feel a bit hungry. You're hating the nutrition part already. If you push it a little bit further, you're going to go off the rails. So you need to be like, if you're training 3 days a week, you're on 1,500 calories, you stall, add in a little bit of cardio. So a little bit, I would say maybe 1 session a week. So whether that be high intensity interval training for 10 minutes, maybe walking on a treadmill for 20, 30 minutes, adding that in. So adding that 1 session in, see how your weight and your body composition changes. We'll talk about tracking in the next slide, but see how you change according to this, and then slowly add either up the cardio, decrease the calories, up the training days. Yeah. All right. So tracking. Now this is the most important thing when it comes to anything, because if you're not tracking, you're never going to know if you're going to make progress. So there's different ways of tracking. If you're on a weight loss journey that you're trying to lose 10, 15, 20 kilos, you're going to have to use the scale. The scale is going to be the best bet, because you have to lose 20 kilos. That means you're going to have to lose 1 kilo 20 times over. So the scale is the best bet. I always like to take photos when I start. Measurements are a good one as well. Sometimes the scale isn't reflective. Most of the time, the scale isn't reflective of your weight loss if you're only losing a little bit amount of weight. So the scale works way more when you're way heavy, when you have a lot more to lose. So I would start off, if you're starting this out, I would start off taking photos, taking measurements, taking a scale weight. If you have over 10 kilos to lose, I'd be making sure to weighing yourself every week, and also taking photos every week. I like to do measurements in the long run, so having a starting measurement and then a finishing measurements like 8 to 12 weeks later. making sure you take photos every week is very important if you want to really make this work. If you do have a big fat loss goal, you need to be accountable to yourself by taking photos every week, every 2 weeks maximum. You need to make sure that your body's changing the way you want it to, and you're held accountable to those photos. Photos aren't going to lie. They're going to tell you the truth, and they're going to tell you if you're not doing what you need to, or you're actually doing really well. And they're motivating, and sometimes they're demotivating, but that's the way it goes. If they are demotivating, you've got to make sure you get them motivating again, right? So on the right here, you can see it says how you lose weight. So this is the scale. This is the scale you're talking about. So make sure you don't get caught up in the scale. As you can see, weight loss is never just a linear downwards trend. Sometimes it is, and that's awesome, but most of the time it's going to be up, down, up, down, up, down. But you need to make sure you're still tracking it so you can see a downwards trend. If you're seeing a downwards trend, that's exactly what you need to be doing, and keep seeing that downwards trend. Once that downward trend is slow, that's when you need to make changes. So you need to make changes to, it says the training, nutrition, and cardio, like we talked about before. So focus on tracking everything you do. So firstly, when you start on any weight loss journey, any goal, make sure you have starting everything. So starting photos, measurements, weight, scale on the weight, and then you have a logbook to log your training, or you can put in your phone or anything like that. You have a logbook, you know what you're doing for your training, you know how much your nutrition is, how many calories you have to eat, how much protein you have to eat, how much carbs, how much fat. So you're doing these basic things to start with. So once we got the tracking, then we have the tools to get us to where we want. Your training, your nutrition, and cardio. We start off with maybe 3-4 days of weights a week. Then we go to the calories, 15 to 2,000 calories, whatever it is. Then we go to zero cardio to start with. Over the weeks, over the months, you're going to have this. As you keep tracking your progress, you'll know it will start to slow down. Once it starts to slow down, manipulate up the training, decrease the calories, up the cardio very slowly. Now, make sure you don't do this too aggressively, because the more aggressive you go, the more aggressive you're going to go the other way. We're trying to keep this sustainable fat loss. So making sure to lose 0.5 kilos to 1 kilo a week is going to be a really good aim, and moderation is the key to long-term success. If you're doing it too severely, when you finish this weight loss goal, you're gonna go 180 back up to almost where you were potentially. And I've done it before. When you're competing, you go to the extreme, and then you go, as soon as that competition's over, you go flip side and go all the way to the other side. So make sure you don't waste all your work. Make sure you do it gradually, moderation, and week to week you want to look for improvement, and that's going to really, really help you. But make sure you're tracking. I get really complacent with this all the time, and but I do know my main list, and I make sure that they're progressing. So I'm always progressing. I know that, and you should always be as strong as you ever were most of the time. For 90% of you time, you should always come in and give me like, this is the most I've ever lifted for X amount of reps, for example. And you should be doing that week after week. That's going to dictate your strength. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about is supplements. None. You don't need any. You don't need any supplements. Now, the supplement industry is a billion-dollar industry, and everyone's going to tell you that you need supplements and you need this, that, this, and the other, and make you spend your bank account on it. But you don't need supplements as a beginner. Especially when you're trying to lose weight, there's not really any weight loss supplements that work and will really work well. They might give you a 0.001% edge, but they're garbage, most of them, and it's not worth wasting your money on that when you can be spending it on maybe something else, like more education. Finding out how to optimize your training, finding out how to optimize your nutrition is going to be much better spent than on supplements that are going to do close to nothing for you. There are a few supplements I recommend, but when you're a beginner, I would start out with none. If you're an intermediate person, you've been training for a year or two, I would, beginners can use whey protein if you do struggle to get your protein goal for the day. As you talked about, the protein is quite high to what you might be on a diet, or quite high for the diet you might be on already. So having to up that protein intake, you might find yourself eating a lot of chicken and stuff, eggs and stuff like that. So using a protein powder might really help you get to that protein goal that a little bit easier. So if I was to recommend a supplement, it would be protein powder, just because you can get, but if you can stomach all the, you know, if you like eating a lot and you like eating all that food and stuff like that, that's awesome and you should do that. You shouldn't, supplements is a very minute thing. But if I was to recommend one, I'd recommend whey protein. Another one that's really good for performance is creatine monohydrate. So creatine monohydrate is good for energy in the gym. It's also good for strength and performance in the gym and power output. So improving, the only supplements that are actually effective are things that improve your performance in the gym. Because the more you can do in the gym, it comes back to training and nutrition. The more you can do in the gym, the more you're going to get out of the gym. So whatever you can, so stuff like caffeine and stuff that boost your, you know, the stimulants and boost your performance in the gym means you're going to get more out of the gym. That's the only thing it's going to be. So, you know, put your hard yards into training and nutrition, get it right, make sure you're sticking to it. If you're doing all that, that's 95% of your base covered. The supplements and stuff is, you know, second. So you don't really need to consume any supplements. Just making sure that you've got everything down to, you know, down to a T, and adhering to everything is going to make the biggest difference. All right, guys. Yeah, and that's it. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this simple system for sustainable fat loss. I've got, this will be on my YouTube channel as well. I've got a few more videos on my YouTube. If you would like to join my Facebook VIP, just hit me up. If you watch this webinar, I'll accept you into the group. Yeah, and there's lots of cool stuff in there. If you have any questions, message me, and good luck with all your fat loss journeys. I hope to see all of you soon.